everyone, and welcome to Talk of the Town. I'm your host for the evening, Karen Bukes. Tonight we have a great show. I have somebody on here that I respect so much. He's done a lot for Plymouth, and he will continue to do so. He's very much respected. Please welcome Stephen Cole.
Karen, thank you. It's very sweet.
Oh.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, yeah, I meant every word.
I have no doubts. You're a very honest person, if nothing else.
If nothing else is true. That's funny. Why don't we start by you just introduce, there's a lot of people who do know you, but there's some that don't. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, the ones who don't are probably the most fortunate. I want to thank you, though, because I don't typically get invited to hang out with the cool kids on a Wednesday night. I'm wondering about that bucket of pig's blood above me.
No, don't.
My name's Stephen Cole. I really am just some guy, but I have a really cool job. I get to run the Economic Development Foundation. And what that really means is we're the EDC, the Economic Development Corporation for the Plymouth region. Sometimes cities and towns have one of these things baked into their government. In other cases, though, when you have a fairly rural, up-and-coming area like the South Shore, South Coast, it's not possible for lots of cities and towns to have this role or function. But it is critical because it's important for drawing in new resources so you can achieve old goals. And so we serve that purpose for all the communities in the Plymouth region, not just the town, but a rose by any other name is still a rose. Plymouth is our center city for our region. And so we're based in Plymouth, and we are focused largely on some of the things that are happening in Plymouth, partly because it's a really cool place to be, but also because of the decommissioning that's happening.
That's right. You know, I was with someone last night who said that very thing.
What's that?
Said that the Plymouth is actually the hub of Massachusetts. It is the largest town. We have great potential. And if handled properly, which you are doing, we could surpass our dreams. And I mean, the economic development that you're creating, why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Let me tell you a little bit about the foundation, if that's okay, and then I'll give you a little bit about our focus.
Absolutely.
So we have 13 board members, and I like to joke that, Jesus had 12 and did so much more.
This is true.
We're focused on land use. How we use our land matters. And if it's zoned residential, that has a different value than, say, if it's zoned commercial. And I'll say that's important because when you look at the town, the town's exchequer and the town budget, when I started in this role 3 years ago, 82% of the town's budget was derived from residential sources.
Right.
And now it's closer to 85. And part of that's because of the decommissioning. Part of that, though, is because commercial and industrial rates assessments have been stagnant for about 10 years. We haven't seen an awful lot of commercial development for the most part. It's a lot of residential development, though. And so land use matters. And I'll just say simply quickly about that, because you and I were talking about fun stats. Some folks watching tonight may have already heard me say this a time or two, but for the first 170 years of this town's history, we only grew by 17 people per year. And that's when people were middle-aged by 12, right? For the next 170 years, we grew by 67 people per year. And for the last 50 years, since the power plant was built, we've grown by 911 people on average per year.
Yes.
Almost 2,000 people per year for the last 5 years.
Oh.
So there were 15,000 people living in this town when that power plant was built. Now there's almost 65,000. We've grown by 50,000 people since then. So how we use our land matters.
How we use our land does matter. And can you imagine 2,000 people coming a year? Well, they must like it.
I think a lot of it is second homes, and I think we saw a lot of de-densifying of cities during the high COVID period. Barnstable and Plymouth counties were some of the fastest growing counties in the country because people were expatriating themselves from the cities. But I want to get back to the other focus areas, including land use. We focus on small business development, workforce development. Before COVID, we weren't as intently focused on it because we were 2.8% unemployment before then. That's fairly functional.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of people leave the labor pool, disproportionately women have left the labor pool, and we're trying to get them to come back. Working with the Chamber of Commerce, Amy Naples is one of my board members.
Good.
I hope she's watching tonight.
Yeah.
She and I were able to secure some funding with the help of Senator Moran to support daycare services so that women could have a place to put their children so that they can enroll in a training program or certification or some kind of a licensure, or start her own business. And
Oh,
while you're
sure.
starting your business, building your inventory and your customer base, you can still have that as an option. So we're working on that program now, and that's under workforce development. And then we have entrepreneurship, which is my personal favorite. These disruptors, these people who are problem solvers, investors in our community. We have, a lot of people watching probably don't know this, but we have companies in Plymouth that are focused on researching and developing AI. In fact, the Maz is a really good ambassador for that, the Mayflower autonomous ship that sailed over here over the summer from the UK all by itself.
That's right, it did.
We have other companies that are focused on AI also, including also robotics, and we're working closely with our friends at Bridgewater State, who has a enviable quantum photonics program. So we were talking a little while ago about Plymouth being a rose by any other name. We are a center city. The fact of the matter is, every other city in Massachusetts is a post-industrial city. Holyoke, Chicopee,
Yeah.
Lawrence, Lowell, Salem, all post-industrial. Worcester. Plymouth is the only city that is actually post-nuclear. And when I say city, when you look at the top 25 communities in Massachusetts by population, we're number 19. Every other person, every other place on that list is a city.
I know, but people don't like to call it a city.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I understand that. And we don't have urban qualities either. So I understand why people don't look at Plymouth and think that way. And that's why I think Plymouth is a post-nuclear city. And what is post-nuclear? Well, we don't have any of those industrial elements of a post-industrial city. For us, post-nuclear is quantum, AI, robotics, marine economy, really giving meaningful value to what we mean by when we say green-blue economy. And that's some of the other things that we're working on under entrepreneurship.
What about bio?
I'm sorry?
Not bio.
Oh,
Biomedical, yes.
I'm glad you brought that
Thank you.
up. There is actually an effort right now. I was working with Derek Brindisi, Lee Hartman, Karen Keene, and Dr. Potvin from the Board of Health. We're actually looking right now at adopting the NIH guidelines to make Plymouth a platinum community. Right now we're a
Yes.
gold community.
That's
but in order to
right.
get to platinum to attract those state-level investments when they think of
Yes.
us, when they get those calls, they want them to think of us. We're working on that right now, and I understand the Board of Health introduced those NIH guidelines this evening, and they'll be debating them over the next couple of months.
Excellent, excellent. And you do know that the potential of businesses, big businesses coming in. But that has to be vetted.
There's a permitting process, and it's an effective permitting process. Yeah, we want to make sure that the business is operating responsibly, consistent with the character of our community, zoned properly, of course.
And I'm so pleased because I do see that you help small business. You know, between you and the chamber, they're, bending over backwards for small business people, and I like that aspect.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's a great community of business leaders. Everyone wants to pitch in and help in any way they can. One of the things that actually I'm pretty proud of is working with the downtown merchants. We just launched a new nonprofit called DWD, Downtown Waterfront District.
Oh, nice.
The two presidents, its co-presidents, oh boy, I knew I was going to forget. Andrew Rivera from Artisan Pig is one of our presidents, and also Sprezatera is also our co-president.
Oh, yeah, on the corner there.
That's right. Yep,
Yeah.
downtown on the corner
Downtown.
of Court. Yep. And we also have Cork and Table is represented as our
love
clerk.
that
Yeah,
place.
we have a really good collection of businesses that want to help move the agenda for downtown forward, make that connection between the waterfront and downtown, help fill vacancies quickly. I'm enamored. I genuinely am. I don't mind working with this business leadership because they just want to get things done.
What made you go into this field?
Oh, all right, so it begins when I was 12.
I believe that.
Because I remember coming home from school and watching Governor Weld make some announcements about how he was making reforms to welfare programs.
Yeah,
I grew up on public assistance.
I remember that.
And I remember thinking, with all the hubris of a 12-year-old, if he knew what I knew, he wouldn't be doing it. And I was
Yeah.
convinced from at least that early on of an age that we need to do more to assist those people who are hardworking but need a helping hand.
Wow.
And so for a lot of years, I was focused largely on public policy. Economic development came much, much later, though. In fact, my career started in Springfield during the control board years. Governor Romney was in place. There was a control board. The city was at the brink of bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And they had turned off the streetlights. I mean, it was about as close to Gotham City as you could get.
Yep.
Yeah. Big Al Bruno, head of the Genovese crime family, was assassinated just a couple years before I got there.
Oh,
it was
wow,
an
yeah.
interesting place. And when I was there, it dawned on me, I was working in finance at the time. In fact, I used to work at Cape Cod Bank and Trust. And
Oh, all
then it became
right.
CCBT Financial, and so by the time I finished my college education, I was an intern at Springfield. I was working in the finance department for the first couple of years, and I realized that you can count beans all day, but you need to make more beans to solve these problems. And that's when I started changing my concentration to economic development.
You could be a town planner.
I was a town planner. I was in Carver, actually, prior to my role here in Plymouth. I was a town planner in Carver, and I did that for about 2.5 years.
Wow. What did you change in Carver?
What did I change in Carver? Well, I streamlined the permitting process, which I know is
Excellent.
hard to do for a lot of
Yeah.
other communities. But one of the things about Carver that was unique was the director of the planning department was also director of 5 or 6 other departments.
Oh.
And so we were able to vertically integrate a lot of that process. We got in the fire department and the police department, DPW, and anytime we got a new permit application in, the applicant had an opportunity to present the merits of the project in real time. In real time, I had a laptop with a screen, and I went around the room to all the other department heads, and I recorded their comments. This is what you
Excellent.
need to do in order to get to the permit, yes. They left the room that day with a printout of what was necessary, and it helped streamline the process.
Were you ever in the service?
The military? No, I wasn't.
Because you think like that. You do. You're very organized.
Well, thank you. I'll take that.
Yeah?
I'll take that, yeah. I will say that one of the, I mean, maybe some people in Carver would object to this, but one of the things that I'm probably most proud of is we were the first community to have dual-use solar arrays. And from what I understand from a lot of the growers, the cranberry growers, it saved the farm. It was an opportunity for them to supplement their income by building raised solar structures so they could still harvest their berries. And in a lot of cases, it saved the farm. And it's been a good model for other communities, I understand.
Did you know the Hajus of Carver?
I'm sorry?
The Hajus?
I'm not sure I did.
They had cranberry bogs. The brothers, they all have cranberry bogs in Carver for years and years, umpteen years. And it almost devastated when Ocean Spray left. They had to recapitulate and refigure, and Michigan and all that is now over Massachusetts selling cranberry.
Yeah, Wisconsin, Quebec, Chile.
Yeah,
They're growing them in
Chile
Chile now. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That's what I understand. But I mean, from what I understand too, the Cape Cod Cranberry Growers Association, I'm pretty sure is responsible for this figure. But I understand that cranberry is a $350 billion global industry. From the growers to the transportation to the juicing, it's the operations and management.
Well, now it's in everything because you can find it in everything. But let's talk about tourism.
Sure, yeah. I mean, but I just want to say that one of the things I loved about being in this area, unlike other cities that I've ever had a chance to work in, I got to work on agriculture. And believe it or not, it's actually one of the most exciting things that you can do. And in terms of land use, you need more land to do it. But I like to tell people the only reason Galileo was able to stare at the stars is because someone else, somewhere else, was worrying about the farming. So farming, it is important, and I do think it is a part of our charm in the South Coast. And I want to make clear to everyone too that just because we're talking about economic development doesn't mean we're talking about anti-conservation efforts.
Right.
Part of our economic policies, part of our economic strengths, frankly, for our area is that we have such a robust conservation space.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that attracted many of us to this area.
Well, I always wanted to be a farmer, but my husband wouldn't let me. Honestly, that's an honest statement.
Well, it's an honest day's work, too. It's
Yeah.
a hard, I feel like it affects the whole family, too, Karen.
Yeah, but my uncle had a farm out in Stoughton when Stoughton was, nothing. And he innovated the chicken farming and the egg business. But I love that. I love farms. So, but...
Well, those are some of the things that even draw some of our tourists. I can't tell you how many times I've been on a hike or a trail. You come around a corner, and there's a large group of international visitors. I experienced the same when I was up north. Japan, China. Yeah, I mean, there's no shortage of draw for that type of a thing. When I was in Salem, I would oftentimes go up to the White Mountains, and much the same was true there. So our nature and our profile for conservation, I think, is what draws a lot of residents, business investment, as well as tourists.
Yeah, yes. Tourism is Plymouth is a destination.
It is. And I know my friend Lee Filson is watching tonight. Is this my camera? Where's my camera? Hi, Lee Filson. We don't work explicitly on tourism as our focus area. But when you think about tourism, it really transcends at least 3 sectors. We're talking accommodations, we're talking retail, and restaurants.
Yeah.
And that's the
right.
backbone of the Plymouth economy. In fact, 23,000 people leave town every day to go to work. 11% of them are driving into Boston.
Say that again, 3,000?
23,000
23,000.
Yep, 23,000 people leave Plymouth every day to go to work. 3% are driving to Barnstable County. A majority of them are hospital or county government.
Sure.
Boston is largely finance sector, you can imagine. And 16,000 people are driving into Plymouth every day.
Wow.
8,000 people drive from one end of town to the other. So we have about as many people leaving every day to go to work as we have people who are coming in every day to go to work.
Wow.
But we were mentioning earlier, too, that we're the center hub. We have 300,000 people driving through Plymouth County every day to go to work. 200,000 people drive into Plymouth County.
You know, Ken Tavares, a former selectman, used to say, you know, they would drive through Plymouth. He wanted them to, you know, stop in Plymouth, make it a destination, and he said that all the time. Just don't drive through. We want you to stay overnight. And now we have the VSB, you know. They handle a lot of money from tourism through the hotels and restaurants, and it's a good thing.
I think so. And in fact, one of the things that we did do to help promote tourism, or at least some elements of tourism, because as my friend Lee Filson says, locals are tourists too. We do these things not just for the people who are more than 50 miles away.
Yeah.
We do it for the people who live just next door sometimes. So we helped create the Poet Laureate program. It's not a traditional economic development project, but when we had our contest, we had standing room only at the library. It was the largest venue we could get to support the people that were coming in. And I tell you, it was standing room only, more than 100 people. A couple of my board members who are probably watching tonight were skeptical by their own admission that it was going to be successful. But we pulled that room. And this was a Wednesday in February, dreary. Wow. And we asked folks, how many people went out for a drink or meal beforehand or will be going out afterwards?
Right.
More than half the room raised their hands.
Absolutely.
More than half the room was from outside of Plymouth. They came in from Kingston and some came from Duxbury. A couple of folks came in from Quincy to see our Poet Laureates. So that's one of the things I'm probably equally proud of, that it's a non-traditional economic development strategy to help bring people in during the shoulder seasons and in the midweeks.
Right.
So long term, we're working with our partners at the town. In fact, there are 3 members of the town leadership who are on my board, Derek Brindisi, Lee Hartman, and the chairperson of the select board is, by virtue of her role, Dickie was the last chairperson, and he had already been serving on our board. So the chairperson's designee to our board is Dickie Quintal.
Oh,
so we have Dickie, we have Lee, and Derek. And I can't think of a better team on the town side to help steward through some of these initiatives, including trying to achieve an off-season 18-hour downtown. People come in the morning, there's enough activity going on during the day and enough dining options for them that they want to stay there during the day, and by the time they're ready to leave, it's after dinner. That's an 18-hour span of time.
That's wonderful.
Other cities and towns can do it. And I'll tell you, Karen, one of the things I'm most excited about coming out of the Donahue Institute, we hired them. We got a grant from the EDA, Economic Development Administration. They did a study about 18 months. And one of the things that came out of that study that's not as widely talked about as I want it to be is that Plymouth is very well positioned to be the 4th P. And what I mean by that, Portland, Portsmouth, and Providence, the 3 foodie destinations in New England. Add Plymouth to that list. We're the 4th P.
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
It's achievable.
Last night, I tried to get into that New Mexican restaurant. There wasn't a parking space. They were on a Tuesday night.
That's good. That's good news.
Unbelievable.
A lot of people think that traffic and lines are a bad thing, but you know there aren't any traffics and lines at Kingston Collection these days, right? And look how desolate
that's a
that
first
is.
world problem. I mean, when you have your establishment, you know, capacity filled, it's a blessing.
I think there's an impediment too to New Englanders generally. We like to park where we can see our car from where we're going.
This is true.
And it makes us nervous. So if we're willing to walk a block, there's sometimes abundant parking. And it's not like we're a dangerous community. There's no
No.
reason someone can't walk a block.
I walked a block last night.
Good for you. It
Yeah.
felt good, right?
But no, I have always, tourism has always held a special place in my heart because I know if handled properly. Now they're talking about the ships coming in. What do you think about that?
You know, I know there's some regulatory issues that need to be hammered out.
Yeah.
I know there's a contract that needs to be negotiated. I know
Yeah.
that there are some other groups in town that feel like they need to be heard. I think that everyone pretty much agrees, though, that this is a good idea. And it's one reason why we were able to secure the federal funding those years ago to dredge the harbor.
That was wonderful that happened.
Where compromise can be achieved, I think that's where our greatest strength is in trying to attract these types of businesses, industries
Yeah.
to come to us. But also, I think it demonstrates also that Plymouth is active. Everyone does have a voice and an opportunity to be heard, and that includes small businesses too. So I very much embrace the democratic process, and I'm convinced that Plymouth is going to be able to attract some high quality investors and visitors.
I am too. Now, what's this talk about a convention center study?
Oh, so have to give some accolades to our delegation. They were able to secure some funding so that Lee Filson and I could conduct a study. We hired a company called CSL, Conventions, Sports, and Leisure. They're out in New York. Very well established team. I mean, this is a group that has a lot of experience and breadth. They looked at Plymouth. They identified our authenticity, and I'm not going to bury the lead. That they came back after a market analysis and said Plymouth can absolutely absorb a mid-size scalable convention center. We're talking about 45,000 feet of ballroom space and adaptable space, another 45,000 of operations and administration space. They're calling for 190 keys, meaning we can absorb another 190 rooms in Plymouth for hotels.
I like that.
And right now, in fact, they also reached out to over 100 national, statewide, and regional event planners and corporations that do major events, retreats. And what we found was that 58% expressed high positive response when asked, would you come to Plymouth if we had a convention center that could accommodate you? Yes, exactly.
Have you identified where?
That's what we need to identify next, frankly, is where this would be most suitable, because there's obviously infrastructure that comes along with this.
Yep.
There is some places in town that we are studying. I can't tip the hand yet.
No, I
but
wouldn't want you to.
I do think that in order for this to be successful, it will have to be a public-private partnership. The town will have to be involved. The state's going to have to be involved. I'm sure our friends at the county government are going to want to be involved. And we're going to have to rely on private investors. But I've seen the state do some really remarkable things when I was in Springfield, and I expect them that they could do some remarkable things for Plymouth also.
Do we have a phone call, Julie?
I don't know, Justin's yapping over there.
Oh, okay. He's taking the phone calls. All right. Yes. So
we're waiting on the, there's one more component of the plan that we're waiting on, and it's the funding options. So once we have that, then we'll have a fully baked plan, and then I intend to take this, the presentation on the road. Lee and I are going to make some presentations to our respective boards, and we're working with the Chamber of Commerce.
Okay, that sounds good. We do have a phone call.
Oh.
Hello, you're on Talk of the Town.
Good evening, Karen. Good evening, Stephen. How are you tonight?
Pretty well. How are you?
Good, thank you. I want to thank you for everything you do, and I am so glad to hear about the convention center. I was one of the members that, not members, but one of the people that were there when they were interviewing just about everyone from every part of the community in Plymouth to get their ideas, and I'm glad that that was shared with everyone. So, and I'll be interesting to see what if what happens. And also, I'm glad that you realize that tourism, well, I know you realize tourism is our number one industry, and it is so important to this town, and it brings in so many dollars, and it really helps the town, the economy. It helps the meals tax and the motel and hotel tax and Airbnb, and it's a great town. It offers a lot. It has a lot of opportunities for everything. Is there any chance of have you worked at all with Boston South on the Woodlot, or is there any plans of doing something with the Grove. I mean, the buildings, most of the buildings there are empty. I didn't know if there was some way to change the zoning. Someone a year back when the Honda dealership came in, they were talking about putting, car dealerships in there. Is there any possibilities of that happening, or something changing with the Grove?
I haven't heard of anything changing with the Grove. I think it's already pretty well zoned for commercial development. So, I guess what we need to do is work on a retention or an attraction strategy to recruit businesses into the area. In terms of the woodlot, I haven't heard very much about that. I know it's very much in its infancy. They're still trying to come up with a concept for what they're going to see there, what they want to build there. The zoning is the zoning, though. So if they're going to do anything that's inconsistent with the zoning, then it's going to require an active town meeting. So you folks will probably hear about it before I do, even.
If they need it.
If they need it, yeah. Yeah, but look, there's no shortage of opportunities, and in terms of vacancies, I think you're right. I mean, other parts of town do see higher vacancies than the downtown, but there's very few opportunities in the downtown right now, and this is one of those things that I sometimes point to about being a city by standard definitions. We've outgrown as much space as we have available, so maybe now we have to start thinking about going upwards. And someone once told me that, the height restrictions are about 35 feet because that's about as tall as the Pilgrims built. Well, if that's true, then if there's anything else I know about the Pilgrims as a student of history, if they could have built closer to God, they would have.
Oh, I love
let
that.
us change the zoning to allow for higher allowances in the downtown and other parts of town so that we can accommodate more types of businesses.
You are, honest to God, you are a hoot.
I'd like to, thank you for, working with the chamber. I also work with the chamber, and I can't think of anyone better to work with. Amy and Bob and the whole staff there, and everything they do to promote business, and it's just amazing. And during the COVID, everything they did to help the businesses, you mentioned something that they also, it's not just businesses with the chamber. They do it for the locals, and they have several events during the year that basically brings in the people from all over Plymouth. You take the Waterfront Festival, Bark in the Park, the Stroll.
It's very popular.
Halloween, on Main was such a success. It was, it's a great group, and I was in a meeting once with the business group, and what they did down at the grist mill, down at the bottom of Leiden Street, it was in such a short time. It was amazing, and shows what this group can do. So I wish them the best of luck, and you too. So I guess I'll let you get on with the show. And
Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you for the call.
Thank you.
Now, that was Stephen. He is the chair of the VSB, Visitor Service Board, and he does a lot of great work all over town, and he loves the chamber. He's always talking about the chamber.
We're lucky to have them.
Yeah,
we really are.
very, because people don't understand how hard they work.
With just a fairly a small staff, they're able to get so much done. With really, for a long time, it was really just Amy and Bob, and I know she's growing the team over there. I don't think the foundation would have been as successful in the last 3 years if we didn't have Amy as a partner and on the board. She's a critical part of our team.
Dustin, could you cue up that video and let me know when it's all set? Thank you.
Which video?
The one of me running on the beach.
The one of Stephen running on the beach?
Yes. Not that one. We're not going that one.
No.
Not that one. Never mind, Dustin.
Oh, there it is.
Children's business?
Oh, the Children's Business Fair. Yes.
There you go.
That's another project that we work on with Amy and in the schools. Kelly Bettinas at the schools. Emily.
Cara Cipriolo.
Emily Goonan. I mean, it is an amazing team. And the first year we worked closely with Scott Williams, who was the principal of West Elementary at the time. So we just had our second year, and I'm very glad to say that we've outgrown every space that we've ever been in. Frankly, it was a much bigger success than we ever expected. We do this as part of our entrepreneurship and small business programs. The idea here is to instill in kids the idea that you can own a business. No one ever told me that when I was a kid growing up. No one ever said that to me growing up.
Nobody said that.
By the time I had too much student debt and these opportunities presented themselves.
But it paid off.
It pays off, and one of the other reasons we do this, at least one of the reasons why we talk internally about why we do it, is we hear an awful lot lately that you don't have to go to college. We're hearing that more and more often. And that's true for some people. You don't have to go to college, but learning never ends. As long as your learning never
true.
ends, then it's probably true you don't have to go to college.
Yeah.
We want to expose young students to this type of a lifestyle too because of the success that they can see this night. So if we were conservative and we asked, Amy and I asked students how much money they made, most kids told us they made over $200. Many made closer to $300.
Wow.
But with as many people walked through that building at Plymouth South Elementary, we expected that $50,000 changed hands that night, was spent at that event.
That is remarkable.
So we couldn't have done that without the chamber. We certainly couldn't have done it without the schools. And every year the program grows in new ways. And I'm glad to say that the town's new clerk is also on the
Kelly.
Kelly's on the new steering
Yeah.
committee. And we're talking about giving these kids little business licenses as a
Oh,
keepsake for
they'll
their...
get the biggest kick out of
Yeah,
that.
and we hope that as they advance through their academic career, that they remember this, and it's something that inspires their decision making. Because to me, it was clergy, college, or military. That's really what was presented to me as my options. There are other options, and we just want to make sure.
And do you know I see all three?
What's that?
Your options.
Oh, for me, you see those?
Yes.
Yeah.
I see all three in you.
Well, if I was smart, I would have gone to the military to help pay for college, and then joined the clergy to become tax exempt. But that's not who I am. I'm not that smart, I guess.
Well, that wasn't your calling.
So suppose not.
Yeah,
No.
that's fine.
Well, no, Governor Weld wasn't talking about those things when I was 12. He was talking about welfare,
know.
so that's what inspired me. But
I wasn't fond of him.
oh yeah, I remember him jumping into the Charles. Him telling us that the Charles was clean, and to prove it, he jumped in with his slacks, and I think I remember him wearing a T-shirt. But
Yeah, I remember that.
That's leadership, if you ask me.
I know, but we could debate this all night. Now, the Shared Kitchen Food Science Center. Now, this is intriguing.
Sure. So this supports the entrepreneurship conversation. It also supports the small business conversation, because we could have a site where small restaurants in the downtown have small footprints,
Yeah.
and having an off-site location where they can do food prep or storage. From what we hear from some restaurants, that would allow them to offer a wider variety of options and maybe even help change over their menus.
I loved it. From the first second you mentioned it, I said, yes, that's
Well, Chairperson Cavaco gets a lot of credit for this too, because she's been talking about this for some time
For
and
a
wants to see it happen
long
also.
time,
and it makes sense.
time.
It supports the existing restaurant industry. We don't have a food truck industry, and I understand on the surface some people might be apprehensive if you're a restaurateur having food trucks in town. But the fact of the matter is, getting back to that 18-hour downtown conversation, if I come in the morning and I have a nice breakfast at Will & Co., and I do a number of activities along the waterfront or throughout town, throughout the day, I don't maybe want to have a sit-down lunch, but a food truck that's nearby for a quick nosh or a bite to eat, that'll keep me downtown for a few hours longer until I'm hungry or thirsty again.
Now, people don't realize that food trucks have excellent food. And I don't say this as a substitute to our wonderful restaurants, because we do have great restaurants. But I had occasion to go to the Pine Hills, where they had a bonfire. They would do this, I think it was a Friday night, a beer garden. And the food trucks would pull in. Well, this one food truck. Now, some people claim that, oh, we have lobster rolls and all that. This was phenomenal. They had phenomenal food, phenomenal. And it's not your, years ago food truck that isn't governed and taken care of, and you come under so many rules, just like a restaurant. So I don't see the problem, but I do understand some restaurants.
Yeah, there's some apprehension, but some restaurateurs are also entrepreneurs, and Alden Park.
Why don't they get a
Why
food
don't they get a
truck?
food truck? Precisely, Alden Park got in on that business. They do a
Yes.
good job. In fact, I've had pleasure renting the food truck for Alden Park. It is excellent food, and it's a good brand. People want to see it.
Yeah.
And there's no shortage of reality TV shows now on HGTV for things like food truck competitions, which are fairly fun to watch. And what's more, how many times do we, or I should say, driving through our area, there's plenty of signs in people's front yards for things like homemade jellies and jams and honey and things like that, right? This is a place, a shared food kitchen, food science center, where you can take your raw product and scale it up. Every layer of production you add value. And this is probably a bad example, but I mean, I'll give you at least one example. Julie and I have talked sometimes about oysters, and an oyster by itself retails for about 53 cents.
Yeah.
And then you go to a restaurant and they charge you about $3.50 for one, and all they do is shuck it and add oyster sauce or
Right, there's a great markup.
yeah. And then you figure you take that same oyster and you put it into a stuffing, right? And now it's a side at a restaurant for $5 to $7. I'm just simply using this as an example about how a raw product can become something worth so much more than itself when you add layers of production. A shared kitchen in a food science center would allow not just restaurants, not just food trucks, but also individuals who are working out of their homes to scale up.
So it would be scheduled,
Sure.
and someone would have to oversee that.
That's right.
Are any coming in?
There's been a lot of interest in this, yeah. We just need a space, frankly. And the foundation's in a good position where once we identify a space, or if there's anybody watching who owns a space who might be suitable, the EDA has said that partly because of decommissioning, we fall into a special category for funding. And EDA wants to make sure we don't become a chronically economically distressed community.
Oh, that's so nice.
And so we need, so altruistic of them. It's true, but the thing about EDA is they typically work in cities like I mentioned earlier, these post-industrial cities. They typically don't have a footprint in Plymouth, but they're here because they want to make sure we don't regress. That's right.
We don't fail.
And I think one of the things that we can do to help secure our economic future is by diversifying what you can do in Plymouth. I mean, right now we talked about the three biggest industries. You can work in a hotel, you can work in a restaurant, or you can work in retail. Most of the jobs in town are that. If we have other types of opportunities, maybe that person doesn't want to work in a restaurant or retail. That person can own a food truck now. EDA, there are funding mechanisms in place that we can help outfit a kitchen. Grants, yep, exactly. So there's no shortage of opportunities, and I've been doing this 20 years, I've never seen this much money on the table. And it's not even that I can pull it all in myself. I need people at the other end of this thing as the end user, as the operator, who's going to take this idea and actually manage it, because that's not what we do. We help provide the resources, the scarce resources, so we can have a targeted goal on how we achieve economic output, and that's economic development.
How do people get in touch with you, Stephen?
Carrier pigeon is best.
We don't have those.
But my email is stephen.cole, stephen.cole, at plymouth-ma.biz, B-I-Z.
Can we put that up at the screen if you spell it out for Dustin? Yeah.
And you can also find us on Facebook. We actually have a growing social media profile now.
Oh, that's
and I'm
good.
getting better about checking messages on social media.
Okay, so what are you under on Facebook?
Darn it, I thought you'd ask that, and I don't know. But if you Google Plymouth Economic Development, we will come
Okay,
up.
it'll pop up.
Yes.
With your handsome face.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
And I'll say, we just recently rebranded ourselves.
Stephen, S-T-E-P-H-E-N.
.cole at plymouth-ma.biz. Hyphen, yep.
Yeah.
So we followed the same style as the town. So the town is plymouth-ma.gov.
Oh, yeah.
And so we basically modeled our domain after theirs for business.
Yes, because people should be able to get in touch with you.
Sure. Yeah, and I want to hear from folks. I want to hear good ideas. I'm not here to work on my ideas. I want to work on the best ideas.
Well, that's a great leader, you know. You're only as good as the ideas come in and can be implemented. You know, I can have an idea, but I don't know how to implement it. So, my hat's off to you.
Oh, thank you.
I hope we get one. I hope you make a big announcement when we do get that kitchen. We should have more than one.
I bet we could support more than one, and there's a high demand for some of these things. There's very few of them throughout the Commonwealth, and one of the things I learned working in urban areas is that food does bring people together.
Oh, yes.
It's one of the reasons why these feasts have survived thousands of years in our calendar, right? I mean, it's part of the thing that helped us abandon some of the things that kept us apart.
It's comforting.
It's
just wonderful, and I love the idea. And you're also with the arts. Art economy.
Yeah, I think Plymouth has an understated and underappreciated arts economy. I mean, we have awesome gems like the Spire, something like 70,000 tickets are sold annually for the. Are we up there? Oh,
yeah.
Wonderful! There it is, folks.
Thank you. The Spire. Just phenomenal.
Aspire it's a gem, and Memorial Hall is a gem, and I think that if we had more venues, even larger venues, and this is one of the things that I think maybe our convention center could help accommodate for. It's better, bigger shows, even original productions, and we have Priscilla Beach. Let's not forget Priscilla Beach, another excellent gem for us. I mean, Massachusetts, what is it, a $543 billion economy for the whole state? $22.5 billion of that is dedicated just to the arts and entertainment. I mean, it's almost 5% of our GDP for the estate. And so when you think about if GDP is the measure of all the goods and services that are produced in an area, and we're talking $22.5 billion of value that's generated just in Massachusetts. Mass is actually one of the top, we're number 13. We're one of the few states that are growing double digits.
Not bad.
Not bad. I mean, but we're in good company. We're in company with states like California and Colorado. These are fairly artistic venues, big states. So we're holding our own for a fairly small state, and I think that Plymouth has so much to offer in terms of its arts economy. It's worth exploring further, but in order to achieve it, we have to have more venues. And venues, by the way, could also be public outside space.
That's true, which I love. I love that.
It could be the thing that helps create dwell time too. So if you have a portion of the sidewalk that allows for live performances, for example, that's something that's absolutely going to draw my attention for 5, 10, maybe 20 minutes if it's good. And that's something else that keeps me downtown longer if I'm a guest.
Yes, when you go to these towns like Providence and Newport, this is what they do.
Portsmouth, yeah.
Portsmouth. They entertain the tourists. They bend over backwards to entertain them. And then the tourists go into restaurants and later on maybe a bar, and they're there all day, all day. I see this, if I go down, I'll see the same person 5 hours later.
There's an awful lot of opportunity for showmanship in this town too. We see it in our government meetings. So I mean, I would like to see some of those theatrics. I would like to see some of those theatrics on the street. And for a time, I lived in Salem, and there was I'll never know who this person is, but they stand all told maybe 4.5 feet tall.
Yeah.
They stand on a black box every day at this particular location in downtown Salem. They put on a Frankenstein mask, and Salem's not even known for Frankenstein. They're known for witches, right? But this person stands there, and I can't tell you how quickly their bucket fills up with cash because people are going to take a selfie with this person, and it costs $1. That's someone's livelihood. And all they're doing is using an underutilized piece of sidewalk, and they're making a living for themselves. They're creating an experience for tourists.
Yes.
And that's something that I don't think we've done yet, but I think we could.
It's like I always admired the person who invented the pet rock. I mean, it's a rock.
Yeah.
But he made millions upon millions of dollars. You know, and you have to have courage when you're an entrepreneur.
Well, it's a lot of bravery and ignorance that goes with it, sure.
Yeah. Well, it's trial and error.
Yeah.
But you perceive, look at Musk.
You know, to that point, you talk entrepreneurs. One of my favorite groups that doesn't get talked about enough in Plymouth is our immigrant entrepreneurs. I mean, to come to a new place that you don't even speak the language, you're not part of the history of the culture. That's inherently disruptive.
Talk to me about that.
Sure. So I mean, well, just look at the north end of Plymouth. I mean, a lot of those businesses have Italian names.
Brazil.
Well, now Brazil. Now we're starting to see some of that, but historically, it's a lot of Italian businesses. You didn't speak the language. You had to sink or swim.
Yeah.
You started a business that was largely a point and order type venue, right?
That's the way it was, Stephen, when I was growing up, though.
And the Armenians are a part of that too. When they came to Plymouth, I mean, no one would have. I mean, they're such an integral part of the fabric of this community. It's the Armenians who service, and they're my car. I buy my cars, So when you look at Plymouth's history, it was a very rich, diverse history. And skip ahead 2 generations, fairly assimilated, right? The Italians are no longer distinct from the Irish or the Armenians any longer. What we're seeing though in Massachusetts is we have 25% of the foreign-born Portuguese-speaking residents in this country. So everywhere else in the country where Portuguese foreign-born speakers live, 25% of them are here.
Amazing.
And when you look at Cape Cod, especially Mid-Cape and the Yarmouth area, and you look in the South Shore, especially New Bedford, Fall River area, it makes some sense.
Yes.
what we're trying to do, in fact, is trying to close some of that language barrier. So John Cox, president of Cape Cod Community College, good friends with one of my board members, Charlie Wall. We're working on a project right now to help close that gap so that people who are from Brazil, who have a whole career managing businesses or being entrepreneurs, we can close that language barrier for them so that they can start a business here. And so Four
That's
Seas
wonderful,
is doing a wonderful job right now with their programs. We're working with the Chamber of Commerce to get a program similar to that here in Plymouth. But when you look at the opportunities from not just women, but also immigrants, getting them into the labor pool, how much untapped potential we have by not engaging them. And I want to give a plug also to an immigrant entrepreneur who's based here in Plymouth, who I'm sure a lot of folks know, but Keegan's Creations. Keegan, downtown Plymouth, next to Gunther Tootie's.
yeah.
Another excellent bakery, by the way.
I know.
Keegan's from Malaysia. In fact, the bakery is closed right now for a few weeks so that he and his wife can go back home and visit their family.
That's nice.
And they haven't been home for, I understand, quite a few years. So here's an example of someone who
Where
came here
is
when they were
he
young.
again? Keegan?
Right on Court Street,
Yep.
right next to Gunther Tootie's.
Yep.
And
I've seen that.
they're open Wednesdays through Sundays. And it's one of my favorite places to go because
What
he's
is
such...
the desserts? What are the...
Oh man, he has lemon blueberry Bostocks. He's got these almond croissants. He's got these chocolate eclair croissants. The muffins are phenomenal. There's nothing in there that is bad.
I'm going to go in.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Well, you have to wait until February. 'Cause
Yeah,
he's on
I'll
vacation
go
now.
in.
But he's a good example of someone who adds a lot of culture and a lot of experience to our downtown, and he comes from Malaysia, and he's here in Plymouth.
We need a good fireplace. Soup. You know the soup?
Yeah. I've not had it, but
It is delicious.
where do you go for it now?
You have to go to Quincy or Bourne. There is a little place in Bourne, and delicious, absolutely
Across the
fantastic.
bridge?
Yep.
Okay.
Down by my sister on County Road.
Okay. I'll cross the bridge for a good soup. I'll do that.
Oh
I'll do
my
that.
goodness,
Let's go to lunch sometime there.
and I'd love it.
All right.
But you have an exciting job.
I do. I get to work with some really wonderful people.
You're supported very well, and you support them, and it's a good partnership.
I think so. I've worked in several places, and I've never felt like I was
At
from
home.
there. Yeah, but I grew up on the other side of the bridge. But I kind of endearingly refer to this area as continental Cape Cod.
Continental.
Much to
Well, we were at
That's
one
right.
time.
Yeah.
Cedarville,
Cedarville, I know Wareham was, I think, if I'm not mistaken, right?
considered Cape Cod at one time.
Yep, that's right. They they built the canal with the narrowest part of the peninsula. But my peninsular Cape Cod friends, much to their chagrin, I refer to us as Cape Cod, continental Cape
Light.
Cod.
Cape Cod light.
No, we're Cape Cod heavy. No.
Yeah.
But look at how this is the power of a good brand, and this is why Plymouth also matters compared to other places I've ever lived or worked. Plymouth has a recognizable brand, and if you go to a phone book and go to B for the businesses in Boston that are co-branded with Boston, there's page after page of them, right? Same with Plymouth. I mean, how many businesses call themselves Plymouth this, Plymouth that,
Yeah.
Mayflower this, Mayflower that, Second Wind this or that? So there's a lot of cultural identifiers about this community that businesses are willing to latch onto.
Right.
That's not the case in other places. And I'll say, look
Well-
at Springfield. How many businesses co-brand as Springfield this?
No. Our heritage is very diverse and it's rich.
Yes.
I mean, think about what they went through way back when, back in the day.
Well, the very story of the Plymouth founding, to me, and there's lots of elements to it, and I'm not speaking as a professor or as an expert, but I will say that
Sure.
when I read that story myself as a layperson, one of the things that stands out to me is that it is itself inherently an entrepreneurial story.
That's right. It is.
Someone had to rent the boat, they had to pay those investors back, and
They
not
had to
all
make
of them
the
did.
decision to go,
That's right.
and they all held hands and they prayed. That we talk about bravery. Could we do it today?
No, I don't really like to cross the bridge.
And they don't like to cross this way
Yeah, they get the
either.
shakes. It's true. My family doesn't cross the bridge this way.
And I think it's a sickness. My daughter used to live on the other side. And she's, I don't like going over the other side. Really? You were brought up here.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, the fact is, we're seeing a lot of interest in South Plymouth to supplement some of the demands that they have on Cape Cod. Like you mentioned biomedical earlier. I mean, there's a lot of interest from developers who call my office fairly regularly because it's either a small business that's looking to expand and have another location, or there's doctors' offices that just can't be built on Cape Cod
We
for
have
myriad
a
reasons.
lot of doctor's office, thank God. I mean, and I think I use all of them. It's better than going to Boston. I used to have to go to Boston all the time. And because that's what he preferred, you know, even though he had doctors here, he preferred to go to Boston. Me, just give me Plymouth because very good doctors here.
Very good doctors, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have an excellent hospital. And I think that the future of Plymouth will include many of the things that we talked about already, but I would be surprised if we don't see a larger biomedical presence in Plymouth over the next 5 and 10 years.
Yeah. Somebody's calling me. She'll get really mad at me.
Have her call the show. We can take the call.
No, it's probably somebody who doesn't, you know, maybe my daughter from out of state.
Okay.
But okay, so what's on the agenda for you coming up? You got daycare and language skills for the workforce.
That's right.
You know, and, you know, the last time I was at the Arts Center, no, it was the time before, they had a whole room filled with theater people. They were going to have a meeting about theater and do the, I don't know what else they were doing, maybe shows they were going to develop. I loved it. These were young kids and dressed very well, nothing shabby. And I just got the biggest kick out of them. And I like to see things like that.
What was the age range?
I would say, look, 20, 24, dressed very well.
Been out of college just long enough to have some kind of an income, right? Some kind of disposable income.
And they were very respectful.
We need more of that.
Yeah, I loved it. So what's coming up for Plymouth?
It's coming up for Plymouth. Well, I expect that by the end of this year, we will have, in fact, we're going through a land sale right now. We acquired a piece of property about a year ago, and we've identified a potential buyer, and so I hope that land sale will seed the foundation with some funding so that we can help achieve some of these goals that we're talking about. But we're working toward the shared kitchen we talked about. We're working toward a co-working space. I think we'll have some success attracting some higher level professionals, accountants, CPAs, lawyers even from the Quincy area. One of the impediments that has been identified in the UMass Donahue study is an impediment to our growth is we just don't have enough lawyers and CPAs to help these businesses answer these basic questions that they have. So maybe having a co-working space would be able to attract some of those professional development, those professional folks down here. I can't tell you how many times businesses have reached out to me over the last year or two just asking me, you know, do we have a program where they can talk to a lawyer for the day? And it's sometimes a very simple question. Sometimes it's a little more involved. But you know, not a lot of these businesses keep lawyers on staff.
Oh my goodness,
Or
they
on
go
retainer.
broke.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're trying to solve some of those things. I think a co-working space will be one of those things that we're working on. We had our Blue Future conference, thanks to our media partners at PAC TV. To highlight the things that we're working on right now in Plymouth. But our next Blue Future conference, which will be sometime in October, maybe November, we expect will be bigger. And in fact, we made money on that last time, working with our friend Michelle Pecoraro. The foundation was
Michelle.
able to pull in $6,000 in revenue after all of our expenses.
Sure.
So very well attended. We expect that will probably be another flagship program for us. And I really do want to make sure that the convention center conversation doesn't fall through the cracks, because that's not just about tourism. That's as much for us as it is for tourists. We don't have a place in this town where we can even have a 5th grade business fair. So a convention center is something, it's a venue that will accommodate those types of events for us. So convention center is probably the biggest thing, shared kitchen, co-working space. And Well, we'll see what else we'll see what else the national economy brings.
Well, I will say that they were very smart to hire you.
Oh, you're kind. Thank
No,
you. Thank
I
you.
mean that. Very smart. You probably went through a lot on that interview.
13 board members. Yeah, did I mention that? And it's a wonderful cross section, Karen. I got to say,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have taken the job if I didn't have the
You
confidence
had to
of the
have
board.
a feeling that it was really good.
Yeah, and this is an excellent. Our board president, Bill Hallisey, owner of Shiretown Glass.
I love Bill Hallisey.
How can you not?
Yeah.
Jay Kimball is my vice
Jay
president,
Kimball,
Wood Seafood.
love him.
We have Kevin O'Reilly.
Kevin
he's our
O'Reilly, another
clerk.
one.
Eddie Santos, rest his soul. He was on
yeah.
our board.
God bless
We're
him.
looking at filling his vacancy. We have Matt Moratori, Amy Naples,
All
I
of
mentioned,
them.
Jack Meal.
Great people.
It's a great cross section of education, finance, small business ownership, and government.
Great people.
Couldn't ask for a better group of folks. This town is very lucky to have them.
Yes.
I'm lucky to have them.
You have the job that Dennis Hanks had.
Yeah, I think he was actually the first director, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know if, I don't know, but Dennis did a good job, but I mean, you're phenomenal.
Well, I get to focus only on economic development. Dennis was running the chamber too, if I'm not
Yes, he
mistaken. Is that right?
was.
So he had a lot of.
I would meet him up in the chamber,
Yeah,
the
busy
old
man.
PAC TV. Yeah.
Yeah, busy man. Actually, there are still some relics around the office that I rely on that he produced. So yeah, he has a good legacy with the foundation.
He's down in Florida now.
I understand that. Yeah, Eddie would sometimes talk to him.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, but he taught me a lot too. He would talk to me. Nice man.
We just went through the corporate reorg for ourselves. In fact, you might see this stylish
Yeah, I was
lapel. So our new corporate logo is actually intended to tell us
Is that
it's a shovel.
Oh, that's
Is
a
it upside
shovel.
down? No, it's a shovel. So it's a shovel, and on either side you have green and blue. And the purpose for that is
okay.
that Plymouth is shovel ready for the green-blue economy.
Oh, I love that. Who thought of that pen?
Oh, we hired someone. Yeah, but it was a good process. We started out very broad, and by the end of it, we winnowed it down. And I have to give the board a lot of credit because
Yeah.
it was through their process that we were able to come up with the final design.
I want to thank you,
No, I wanna
bottom
thank
of
you.
my heart. Thank you very much.
I'm looking forward to working with you in this year.
Oh, I am looking forward to working with you at any time. You're such a dear.
Thank you.
A lovely man. When's my next date? It's 2 weeks from now, but I'm not sure of the date. 25th or something like that. I have people like Steve Bulletin coming on from the planning board. I have Kevin Canty coming on, and they have certain topics to talk about. And all through this process, we will have more interesting people for you. And I missed you, by the way. Happy New Year. First show since the new year. See you in 2 weeks.